Welcome to Every Woman. We have Dr. Chen and Dr. West from BreastLink, and they're here to tell us about a new law about dense breasts and letting women know about their risk for cancer. But before we start, thanks for being here, Dr. Chen and Dr. West.
Thank you for having us.
So before we start about the law, tell our viewers, what is dense breasts and why should women worry about them? Can you tell us about that, Dr. Chen?
Dr. Chen is the world's expert on it.
The density of the breast, the breast is made up of a combination of fat as well as glandular and fibrous tissue. The percentage of each determines whether or not we deem them dense or not. So breasts can be categorized as fatty or as dense. It's important to know the density of your breasts because when breasts are dense, you have an increased risk for developing breast cancer. Additionally, when one's breasts are dense, there can be limitations of mammography. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to detect an early breast cancer in a woman with dense breasts.
What is it about dense breasts that makes it hard to detect and hard to, or more likely for them to get breast cancer?
A woman's breast on mammogram looks different if it's fatty or if it's dense. If a woman's breast is fatty, it has a predominantly black background, whereas if it's dense, it has a predominantly white background. Cancers on a mammogram are white. So if you can imagine, therefore, a cancer which is white on a white background will be more difficult to visualize and detect than one that is superimposed on a black background.
So basically, what are your screening options? Can you just basically have a mammogram? Are there other options to women out there? What can we expect?
So the mammogram is a wonderful tool, and I want to just reiterate that it is the gold standard for early detection of breast cancer, regardless of the density of your breast. It is a wonderful examination, and we detect early breast cancers with this exam, so it's very important.
And is it only for women over 40, or should other women with history of, breast cancer in the family consider a mammogram earlier?
That's a great question. All women at the very latest should begin screening mammogram at the age of 40. However, there are a certain subset of women who have risk factors that would place them into a category where they should start screening earlier than age 40.
So with those risk factors, does having dense breasts increase the risk of getting breast cancer?
Dense breasts are associated with an increased risk for developing breast cancer. However, that risk by itself is not great enough to justify the patient beginning to screen earlier than age 40. A risk factor, just for an example, a risk factor that would justify screening earlier than 40 would be a very strong family history of breast cancer. So a woman who has a first-degree relative, and that would include a mother or sister, who's been diagnosed with breast cancer at an early age, at a premenopausal age, perhaps in her 40s, or some women have even developed in their 30s, that would justify that woman starting to screen earlier than age 40. Or if the patient has a known diagnosis of a breast cancer gene, we absolutely encourage screening for breast cancer earlier than age 40.
Just a quick question. I'm just wondering, you were talking about, the backgrounds that the x-rays are printed on, or the mammograms. Is there any way they can just change it, so that it's, that it's not printed on black and white, so it's more visible? What about pink? Is that right?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, that cannot be changed. The density of the breasts is determined by one's genes. There are certain small fluctuations that do occur as we age. The breast can become a little bit fattier. However, it's a minimal amount of change. And so really it's the way that we were made, whether we have fatty or dense breasts.
Okay. Well, Dr. West, tell us a little bit about this law. I'm kind of confused. Why do lawmakers need to step in and try to inform women about dense breasts?
Well, it started with a woman in New York that was a PhD. She started mammography at age 40. She went regularly. She had her most recent mammogram at age 52, 12 years after her onset, and it was negative. A few months later, she felt a mass, and she presented with advanced breast cancer, had 13 positive lymph nodes. So she went to the doctors, first of all, and said, why didn't anybody tell me I have dense breasts? And, well, at that time we weren't making, because there wasn't much we could do about it. We didn't have the newer alternatives like MRI and particularly screening ultrasound that we're so excited about. So as it turned out, this lady has very poor survival rate. You know, this is an advanced cancer, and even with modern chemotherapy, it's going to be a challenge for her. So she went to legislation in New York and just push, and finally passed the legislation. And it's also been passed in Connecticut and Texas, and soon to be. It's been passed in California. It goes into effect in April.
Yeah, but we need this nationally. We need this all over the country. How come we don't have that?
How come you're not president? I think if you were president, we would have
this. It's up to me. I'd pass this thing nationwide. We win everywhere. Women are all over the country, not just, here and there. But, every state should have this.
Well, we thank you for coming on and telling us about this and having women be aware of their dense breasts. Yes. If you want to find out more about this and finding out about Dr. Chen and Dr. West, you can visit their website at breastlink.com.